Online. This morning I'm joined with our broadcast audio director, Sam. He makes sure that the quality that you get at every other campus, you also get online. So walk us through what that means and what it looks like on a Sunday.
Typically, just on any Sunday morning, I come in here and I take what we do at our broadcast location and make sure I can get it to you so your ears can hear it. And I think the coolest part about that is having the stream pulled up and getting to see where everybody's commenting in from, people from Kansas, or I'm sure we have someone from Zimbabwe or something crazy like that. So it's cool. So now you know me and who's on the other side, and you can say good morning, and yeah, it's really cool.
Speaking of audio, we have one announcement this week. If you are in the Denver metro area, Flatirons Music is having a night of worship October 11th. So go ahead and buy your tickets at flatironsmusic.com.
Good morning, everybody. Glad y'all are here. Let's all stand and worship our good God together. Heaven thundered and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you form. Faith commanded and the mountains moved. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. So good to see you all here this morning. Why don't you take a second, just welcome somebody next to you, and you guys can have a seat.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night. I should be sleeping like a log. But when I get home to you, I find the things that you do make me feel alright. You know I work all day to get your money to buy your things, and it's worth it just to hear you say you're gonna give me everything. So why on earth should I moan? 'Cause when I get you alone, you know I feel okay. When I'm home, everything seems to be right. When I'm home, feeling you holding me tight, tight. Yeah, it's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night. I should be sleeping like a log. But when I get home to you, I find the things that you do make me feel alright. So why on earth should I moan? 'Cause when I get you alone, you know I feel okay. When I'm home, everything seems to be right. When I'm home, feeling you holding me tight, tight. Yeah, it's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night. I should be sleeping like a log. But when I get home to you, I find the things that you do make me feel alright. You know I feel alright. You know I feel alright.
All right. Hi, how are we? We good? Yeah? All right, nice. I'm a Beatles nerd, and so I'm very excited that they just played that. At the same time, I forgot how much cowbell is in that song. A lot of cowbell. I just kept wanting to say more cowbell, which some of you know what I'm talking about. Others of you think I'm crazy. You're both right, so that's whatever. I'm Ben Foote. I'm the teaching pastor here. Glad you're here today. We're kicking off a brand new series today, which we're going to jump into. But before that, I got a couple quick announcements for you, some in-house business. The first one has to do with I Empathize. I Empathize is a partner that we have as a church. Their whole mission and their job is to eliminate and eradicate the sex trafficking industry. So you might have heard the name I Empathize in here several times, but maybe not know exactly what it is they do. If you want a better understanding of that partner, they actually did something really cool for us today. You can go out these doors after church. Over by the info desk, there's another set of doors. That's our old academy space. And I Empathize has set up a walkthrough exhibit. It's got artifacts and it's got information. On the one hand, it's trying to show you the darkness of the industry that they're fighting against, and then also inform you on how they're fighting against it. I would really recommend it. Would take just a couple minutes of your time after church, go walk through that exhibit. I will say this. They deal with a very dark industry, obviously, and so this exhibit has some pretty dark stuff in it, so I wouldn't take your kids in there. Right, the recommended age is middle school and higher. Honestly, if you're a parent, I would say walk through it first yourself before you take your kids in there. But please do that. Hopefully makes you aware of the gravity and reality of the sex trafficking industry and how I Empathize is fighting against it. If you walk out of that and then you go, you know what, I would like to help them. I want to partner with them and help eliminate this thing, then there's actually a fun and easy way you can be a part of that coming up, which is next Sunday. They're hosting a cornhole tournament, and all the money that's made at the cornhole tournament is filtered into I Empathize to help eliminate the sex trafficking industry. It's also just would be a fun way to spend your Sunday, all right? I heard that there's over $10,000 in prizes that you can win at this thing, which makes me want to quit what I'm doing doing right now and go practice cornhole. I won't, but so go do that next Sunday. Definitely go walk through that exhibit after this. You can register your cornhole team at the website, iempathize.org. All right, one down. Second announcement. Second announcement is coming up the evening of October 11th at our Denver campus. We're having a Flatirons worship night. And so it's not just for the Denver campus, it's church-wide. We're just meeting at the Denver campus. But that's a night where there's no talk, there's no sermon. We're just going to get together and sing until we can't sing anymore, and we're going to worship together. All of our worship leaders from all of our different campuses will be there. There's childcare for kids 5 years old and younger. So go do that if that sounds like a good way to spend the evening. I will say this, if you want to go, you have to sign up, and you have to sign up soon at flatironsmusic.com because there's just limited seating in the Denver campus, and so it really is kind of first come, first serve. So if you want to be at that thing, then it's okay if you ignore the first 5 minutes of my talk. Go register online, all right? And that has been your weekly announcements with Benjamin David Foote. You're welcome. Thank you. I'm a great announcer. Let's get into this. So 90,000, all right? That's on the screen. You've seen that a couple times in here. What's that about, right? I'm not good with numbers. I know that 90,000 is a huge number. I was the kid in elementary. Maybe your school did this thing where they put like beans in a jar or something. You got to estimate how many beans are in the jar. Person with the closest answer gets a coupon to the Scholastic Book Fair or whatever. I was the kid who would stare at that jar for like 5 minutes, and then I'd be like, okay, 725. And then I would put my slip in and find out a day later that there were like 13,000 beans in the jar. So I'm not good with numbers, but I do know that 90,000 is a huge number. I actually looked up some interesting trivia around this number, some tidbits of information for you. Here's one. If you were to stand up out of your chair and walk 90,000 steps right now, you would have walked 45 miles. If you jump in your car and you drive 90,000 miles without stopping because your car's from the future or something, you could drive around the earth 3.5 times. My personal favorite is this. If you were to take 90,000 pennies and stack them perfectly on top of each other, the height of your penny tower would be exactly 90,000 pennies tall. It's fascinating. The internet's great. 90,000, a huge number, right? But what's it have to do with us? Why is it on the screen? Why is it in the videos? Why is it the name of our current teaching series? Well, here's why. It's because that is the average amount of hours you are going to spend at work in your lifetime. And that's a lot of hours. To put this into perspective for us, I looked up some studies online, some real studies. All these studies are based on the average lifespan being 72, okay? You got more than 72 years in you. I know it. But according to this study, you don't. But anyway, if you live 72 years, you will have lived 622,000 hours. But a huge chunk of that time, you're just drooling on your pillow. You're going to be asleep for 228,000 hours. I hope you have, sweet dreams or whatever. That leaves you with 394,000 hours that you'll be awake in this life. That's all we get. 394,000 hours to accomplish everything and anything that we want to accomplish in this lifetime. That's all we get, people. How much of that time do we spend at work? 90,000 hours. That's 22% of your waking life is at work. Again, if you're bad at numbers like I am, I see that and I go, 90,000 out of 394,000 hours. That's not that bad. Well, let me continue putting this into perspective for us. How much time do we spend doing things that we really, really enjoy? Like, for example, for how many hours will the average person laugh in their lifetime? Well, that's 3,600 hours. It's not a lot. How much time will we spend exercising, taking care of ourselves physically? That's 4,320 hours. Not a lot. All the CrossFitters in the room are like, I spend way more time at the gym than that. Okay. All the rest of us are like, yes, we know. You tell us every chance you get. What about eating? All right, we all love a good meal. How much time will we spend eating? 32,100 hours. That's a lot of time. Someone clapped. Yes. That's a lot of time, right? That's a lot of Applebee's that you got to eat or whatever. What about this? How much time will we spend having sex in our lifetimes? Drum roll. Every man in the room is like, please be a lot of time. Average person will have sex for 2,800 hours in their lifetime. I still can't figure out if that sounds like a lot or too little, but All right, what about quality time with our family and our friends? All right, this is the most valuable thing we'll do in our life, right? No one will ever argue that. We'd all say that being a friend or a parent or a spouse is the most important role we'll play, far more important than the role we play at our office. So how much time do we spend with these people? Well, on average, 42,300 hours. And that one stings. Because to bring you back to the name of the series, we see those hours on screen, all the time we'll spend doing things that we enjoy. But at the end of your lifetime, when they dress you up in a suit for the last time and they lower you into your grave, all of those hours pale in comparison to the 90,000 hours we'll spend at work. You and I will spend twice as much time at work as we do with our friends, our kids, our wives, or our husbands. Let it sink in. 90,000 hours at work. I want you to think about what you do for a living right now. Because it's coming up. You know, you're going to clock in 9 a.m. Monday morning. It's right around the corner. And whatever it is you're clocking into is 1/4 of your life in a nutshell. It's by far the lion's share of what you'll spend your time doing when you're awake. So what does that 90,000 hours look like for you? Is it 90,000 hours of Excel spreadsheets, or maybe you're going door to door, maybe you're selling coffee? Is it 90,000 hours of expense reports and budget to actuals, or 90,000 hours of avoiding that one coworker you got? That's fine. We all have that person. We all have a person that, let's be honest, you're in the coffee room, you're getting coffee, and then you're like, crap, Kathy's here. I'm stuck. That's fine. We all have a Kathy, all right? How many hours do you spend avoiding Kathy? What do you do for work? Since it takes up so much time in our lives, do you enjoy it? Is it life-giving or is it life-draining? Do you look forward to or do you dread 1/4 of your life? It's sobering to think about. This is where we got to start today, though. We got to start this series by kind of getting slapped in the face with the reality that by the end of our lives, we will have given 90,000 hours to work, 90,000 hours to a company, to a boss, a tech startup, to a commute, you name it, 90,000 hours to a paycheck. And every single one of those hours we spend has better be an investment. Like, we should see a return on that investment, or it's worthless. So what do we envision the return on our investment of 1/4 of our life being? Like, what is the goal of working 90,000 hours in our life? Some of us would answer and we would say, well, I work so I can play, right? I work for the weekend. I work to afford my life outside of work. And I get that, but is that the wisest investment? Is that the best way to use your time? To grind through 45 hours or more of work a week so you can enjoy a couple hours on the weekend? It's not a wise investment. If we were talking money instead of hours, you'd be losing. You would be in the red. Some of us might answer, I'm just working to survive. And I get that. To varying degrees, we all are. But can that really be it? Right? You give away 90,000 hours of your life just to ensure you stay fed and breathing on this planet? Is that the only return on investment we can expect? And then others of us, we would never admit it out loud, but if we're being honest, we would say, well, I work in order to make a name for myself. I work to be important. I work to be valuable. I work to be remembered. I'm building a legacy. And I get that, but listen, you got to prepare yourself for the return on your investment being a massive letdown. Because here's the truth. Unless you are the next Abraham Lincoln or something, your name will be forgotten with time. That's not a bad thing. It's just reality. What's the name of your great-great-great-great-grandpa? You don't know. All right? No one's going to chisel you into marble and remember you for the rest of your life. So is it really worth 90,000 hours of our lifetime just to make a few people around us jealous of our success? There has to be something more, right? There has to be some purpose to the 90,000 hours we spend at work, some goal that's more than just a paycheck or mere survival or feeling important, right? I hope so. Because if not, you and I are doomed to investing 1/4 of our life into a vacuum that we've called a career. And if that's true, it's a bitter pill, and we should just swallow it now and go home. Now, thankfully, and this is what the entire series is all about. Thankfully, God says that work is actually more than all the stuff that I've just listed. It's good for us. It's good for others. It's more important than just that. And Jesus does bring hope into the 90,000 hour chunk of our lives that we spend at work. And so that's what we're going to talk about throughout this series. Basically, this series is how do we take this 1/4 of our lives that we've called work, and how do we take work and make it worth it? And today's just introduction for the series. Today I'm just going to kind of lay the groundwork for what we're talking about. And today I'm going to drive home the truth that according to God, work matters. Like your work matters. No, not just the work of pastors and doctors and nonprofit organizations. That work matters too, but so does yours. Why? Well, because according to God, work, like in general, the act of working matters. It's important to him, and he made you to do it. We see this truth in the first couple chapters of the Bible, which is the story of the origin of everything. We looked at a few pieces of this chapter in our series on rest. Now we're going to look at a couple different pieces through the lens of work. So some of this might sound familiar. I'll remind you, but the very first sentence of the Bible is this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And we read on and we learn that he created everything. Everything that we see on this planet, he made. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Not going to rehash it right now. What we need to know right now is that in the first sentence of the Bible, we essentially learn, in the beginning, God got to work. It's the very first thing he does. He gets to work, gets his hands dirty. He creates something out of nothing, and he spends the first 6 days of existence as we know it working. On the sixth day, he creates his greatest and finest work, which is humanity. That's you and me, men and women. And the Bible says that God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So that means you and I are created in God's image. We're made to reflect his character and nature to everything and everyone else that he's created. Now, that probably sounds familiar because we recently talked about it. Here's the thing we need to pay attention to today. When we read that verse, we're only 27 verses into the big, fat, thick book that we call the Bible. And we learn that we're made in God's image. God does a lot of things. There are a lot of ways that you can reflect his character to the world around you. But when it comes to the first 27 verses of the Bible, we have still only seen God do one thing so far, and that's work. Which means, among other things, we were created in the image of a working God. Now, take your 90,000 hours, your job, set it aside right now. This fact that God is at work, what does this mean for us spiritually, like in terms of our relationship with him? Well, it's great news, all right? Because it means that any picture that you and I have of God being in a white bathrobe on a throne in a faraway place, and he only really listens to you if you really beg him loud enough, right? And he's just being fed clusters of grapes by flying baby angels, or it's an elaborate picture, but whatever picture you have of God in your head that's like that, it sucks. Why? Because that's not how God operates. On day one, carrying through to today in 2019, the Bible introduces us to a God who is at work. He's not distant. He's not uninvolved. He's at work. He's getting his hands dirty. He's deeply involved in our lives, at work in our lives. He's in the act of creating something out of the nothing parts of our lives. Not only is God at work, but he loves his work. He delights in it. If you go read Genesis 1-2 on your own, it's a good read, you should do it. If you were to go read that later today, you wouldn't discover a God who's grumbling and moaning about having to be at work. You wouldn't see it. You don't see a God who's going, it's only 2 o'clock? I got 3 more hours of making earth, this sucks. You don't see that. Instead, you see a God who creates, who gets to work for the sheer joy of it. So God is at work in your life, and he loves his work in your life. I got the Bible app on my phone, and once a day it's like ding, gives me a verse of the day or whatever. Last Sunday when I was working on this talk, I was actually working on this part of the talk, and my phone goes ding, and the verse that popped up is what I'm talking about. The verse is this: the Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves, and he'll take great delight in you. And in his love, he'll no longer rebuke you, but he'll rejoice over you with singing. What does that mean? Well, it means that anytime I screw up, God doesn't look at me and go, OMG, like, oh my me, like Ben screwed up again. I got to get in there and fix it. He doesn't do that. Now, in his love, he doesn't rebuke me. And instead, what does he do in his love? He gets to work. And he delights in his ability to save me from myself. God is with us. He's at work in our lives, and he loves his job. And it's in that kind of an image that you and I were created. We were created in the image of a working God, and he loves his job. That's why in Genesis 1, we learn that God actually blesses humanity with work, which, it means, as crazy as it sounds, the very first gift, it's a gift that God gave us other than the ability to breathe, is the ability to join him in the kind of work that he does. Let's look at the moment that happened in Genesis. It says this. It says, God blessed them, humanity, and he said to them, he goes, okay, I'm going to bless you. I got a gift for you. It's going to be great. Here's the gift. Be fruitful and increase in number. He says, go make people like I made you. Go make families and go make societies and communities and civilizations just like I do. It says, fill the earth and subdue it, which means the earth is your resource I've given you. Manage it well like I would manage it. Use it to create cities and structures and culture and art. He says, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every single living creature that moves on the ground. So join me in the act of caring for and managing everything that I've made. Now, we just learned an interesting fact, but we'll miss it if we're not careful. We just learned that according to Genesis, God created an unfinished world. It's not done yet in Genesis 1. And instead of finishing it himself, he gives humans the gift of joining him in moving this creation project forward. In other words, at the very beginning, God says, join me in making something great of this place. Do that kind of work with me. Join me in making something great of this place. Meaning, we're off to a great start, but the project is unfinished, and I want you to finish it with me. Move the creation project forward. Go make societies. Go become leaders and followers and students and teachers. Go become everything from like linguists to counselors and artists. And he says, go make civilizations. Right? Go become city managers and architects and plumbers and accountants. And he says, use this place I've given you as your resource to do that. Use it to, eat food. Also use it to build your bridges. Use it to invent everything from the wheel to the printing press to the next great app for the smartphone. He says, go to town. God says, join me in making something great of this place. Now, quick timeout. For that reason, in this series, anytime I say work, I'm not only referencing the responsibility for which you earn a paycheck. Right, your paycheck earning work, that'll eat up 90,000 hours of your life. But that's not the only work that we do here. Why? Because according to God, work is anything that moves the creation project forward. Anything that makes something great of this place. Which means, basically what I'm saying is this series is not a wash for you if you're not currently bringing a paycheck in. For example, if you're a student, God would say you're at work. You're learning how to harness and subdue this place. You're learning how to take like history and biology and math and music, you name it, and make them work for you so that you can make something great of this place. If you're a stay-at-home parent, you are at work and you have your hands full. There are a couple of years where I would take Friday off and then Allie would go work all day Friday. So a couple of years of my life where I was a stay-at-home dad once a week, I know that's hard work. I would say it's harder than my other job. It's just I'm not earning a paycheck, and my bosses are 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and 1.5-year-old tyrants. my boss at church, his name is Jesse DeYoung. That's who I report to. If Jesse were to treat me like my kids, if he were to come in my office every 20 minutes asking for goldfish, ask me to wipe him every time he goes to the bathroom, I'd quit, I'd hit him in the mouth on the way out the door. Can't do that with your kids. It's really hard work. So for the rest of the series, when I say work, I am definitely referencing the 90,000 hours you'll spend earning a paycheck, but I'm also referencing anything that moves the creation project forward. This is your parenting. These are your midnight call friendships. This is your side hobby of photography or making music, whatever. All right? Time back in. What did we just learn in Genesis? We learned the ideal. We learned God's grand vision for what the gift of work is supposed to look like, how it's supposed to operate in our lives. And it means, no, you're not just a FedEx delivery man. You are making something great of this place. You are providing businesses and homes with the tools they need to be successful. In our day and age, our world would literally grind to a halt if you didn't show up to your job. And no, you're not just a CPA. You're making something great of this place. You're giving people like me who suck financially, you're giving us the ability to have financial peace and security. And no way, you are not just a mom. You are making something great of this place. You are training these little people up and filling the earth with them. That's what we learn in the first 2 chapters of Genesis. We learn God's grand vision for work. And he says work is a gift for us, and we're supposed to love it like he loves his job. But at the same time, we know that the reality of work is very far removed from the grand vision of work. Right? Sure, it's interesting to think about a couple minutes in church. You know, I'm the delivery man, I'm the CPA, I'm the parent, but in God's eyes, I'm doing the honorable work of moving the creation project forward. That's cool to think about, but the reality is that work is hard. And it's hard for a whole slew of reasons. You know, first of all, work doesn't come naturally. Have to work at it. Got to earn a degree, got to go to trade school, you got to job hunt, which is the worst, right? You know, resume after resume after resume, interview after interview. You got on-site training, ongoing training, recertifications. There's always someone outshining you and risking your job security. Work doesn't come naturally. For a lot of us, we start to distort work. And so for a lot of us, work can feel fruitless. It feels pointless. This is any of us in the room going, listen, dude, my job doesn't matter. I spend every hour at work wishing I was home. I spend every hour at home dreading going back to work. I could be fired, transferred, promoted, demoted, put out to pasture, and none of it would impact the world. Work can feel fruitless or pointless. For others of us, work can become selfish and all-consuming. So this is any of us who go, well, my job's actually very important. It's actually the most important. It's actually more important than family and friends and stable relationships, and it's more important than my physical, emotional, spiritual health. Why? Because I'm making a name for myself here. I'm making money for myself here. I'm climbing the ladder here, and I'm climbing it quickly. And so, yes, I will sacrifice myself on this altar. I will make my job my God. Work can be selfish and all-consuming, and then for every single one of us in the room, eventually, work can become our entire identities. It's the second question we ask people. You know, what's your name? What's the second question? You know, what's your family like? What do you like to do? How's your day been? No, it's what do you do for a living? It's our entire identities. The reality is you were born a woman. You were born an individual. You'll die a doctor. You'll die a teacher. I was born a man. I was born an individual. I'll die a pastor. It's become my entire identity. This is why our success or our failure at work, we read that as a success or a failure of character. This is why the cutbacks and the layoffs just about killed us. This is why we feel embarrassed. You shouldn't, but we feel embarrassed for telling people we're in between jobs. And this is why when we finally make it to the dream of retirement, so many of us feel immediately bored and useless and unimportant. It's because somewhere along the way, our jobs became our entire identities. That is the reality of work. So my question is, what happened? What happened to God's grand vision for work and how it could be good for us? Where did we go so terribly wrong? And the answer to that riddle is also in Genesis, and it's in chapter 3. Right? Because the very first people, Adam and Eve, they made a decision that we make every single day. We can't blame it for them. But that, their decision has affected us to today. It's affected the rest of history, the rest of humanity. They made a decision to be their own gods. Right? I want to decide what's good. I want to decide what's bad. I want to decide what I can and what I can't do. Christian people call that moment the fall of man. And the result of the fall is that this thing called sin enters into reality. And sin is our inability to hit the bullseye anymore. Sin is our inability to live completely within God's grand vision for how to do life, including his grand vision for work. And not only that, but in Genesis 3, work specifically takes a pretty big hit. So in Genesis 3, when sin enters the world, the two gifts that God has given humanity, the two blessings, which is making babies and going to work, they're now under a curse. First one's childbirth, and God says, listen, you're still going to join me. Right, you're still going to join me in making people, right? But from here on out, it's going to hurt. It's going to be riddled with complications. It's going to be the kind of thing that it's the only thing you want in life and you're not going to be able to have it. It's going to hurt now. It's under a curse. And then work is placed under a curse. And God looks at Adam and he says this, he goes, cursed is the ground because of you, and through painful toil you'll eat of it all the days of your life. So work is going to be hard now. And it'll produce thistles and thorns, so work will contain obstacle after obstacle. And you'll eat the plants of the field, but by the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, and for dust you are, and to dust you'll return. In other words, from now on, until the day we die, you and I have to earn our living. We have to earn the ability to stay alive. Gotta eat to live, gotta work to eat. It's gonna lead to constant stress and exhaustion. Work is under a curse. This is an important distinction. Work itself is not a curse. Work is a blessing. Work is a gift. Work itself isn't a curse any more than having babies is a curse. Instead, work is under a curse. The good gift of work is now riddled with obstacles. It'll be difficult, and it'll always trend towards defining you. So step back. What have we just learned? What is the groundwork I'm trying to lay right now? Let me summarize what we just learned, and then we're about to pray and go home, all right? What we just learned is this. According to God, work matters. And the reason work matters is because his grand vision for work is that we're joining him. We're joining God and making something great of this place. You and I are supposed to have that vision in our sights. That is our target. But we're supposed to aim at that target while also understanding the reality that work is under a curse, which means this for us. It means it should not surprise us to discover that work is very difficult. And it should not surprise us to discover that work threatens to own us and define our worth. And then this one's a kick in the pants, but it shouldn't surprise us to discover there's literally no perfect job out there for you. It doesn't exist. I'll get people who pretty frequently will come up to me and they'll say something like, man, I'm jealous of your job. Like, it's got to be so rewarding and fulfilling. And after all, you're doing the Lord's work, and you just have the perfect job. And I bite my tongue, but I always want to interrupt and go like, what perfect job? Like, don't get me wrong, I love my job. I do, I love it, I love you, I love being here doing this with you, but this ain't no perfect job. All right, it's exhausting, like physically and emotionally and spiritually. Like the spiritual stuff, that stuff's real. It's a guarantee. Someone will get sick in my house, the kids will be up for all night for no reason, or the car will break down, or I'll have an out of the blue dive into depression. Every single weekend I do my job on this stage. The teaching pastor before me, Scott Nickel, he was like, dude, if you want to do this for a lifetime, just prepare yourself for that. It never goes away. My job has a constant weekly deadline. It's high pressure. My job also doesn't have any completed projects because as a church, we deal in loving people who are broken like us. So there's never any completed projects because broken people are never, ever completely fixed, right? Including myself. I can't tell you how many times I've gone home, I've told Allie, I'm sure you've had the same conversation about your job. I've gone home and told her, I just want to quit. I just want to work at Chase Bank. I want to clock in at 8 a.m., then clock out at 5 p.m. And then like when you clock out, there's like, I'm not thinking about work all night at home and I don't have the deadline and the pressure. I just want to clock in, clock out, go home. That sounds like the perfect job. And now, of course, anyone who works at a bank is like, what perfect job? You're like, my job's more than putting the can in the tube. Right? It's not cakewalk. Listen, let me be clear. I don't tell you any of that stuff about my job to be a martyr. I don't tell you any of that stuff to earn your pity. I hate being pitied. I tell you that so that you know, me too. All right? I know the grand vision of work, but the reality of the curse is real. The struggle is real. I'm not exempt from it. Which means over the course of the series, I will not be talking down to you. I will not be preaching at you. I will not be saying stuff like, here's how you normal people in your normal jobs can come work perfectly like pastors like myself. I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I'm in this thing with you. Why? Because work is a gift, but it's under a curse. Yes, even if it's the Lord's work. And so what do we do about this 90,000 hours of our lives that we spend at our jobs? What do we do with this struggle, this dilemma of work is a gift, but it's under a curse? I can tell you right off the bat probably two things we shouldn't do. All right, the first one is this. The solution is not to find the perfect job. Why? Because it doesn't exist. Why? Because work is cursed. But on top of that, even though this is a bit of a culture shock in America, I'm going to say it anyway. The solution is not to work drastically less than 90,000 hours. What do I mean by that? Well, in America, we have what's called a low view of work. That means we view work as a necessary evil. Just something I got to do to go get a paycheck so that I can go and enjoy my real life, which is anything outside of work. America has a low view of work. On top of that, the church in general has a low view of work. We hardly ever talk about it. This is the very first series we've ever done on work here at Flatirons. We'll tell you how to deal with your addictions, how to learn forgiveness, how to learn to love people a little bit better. We'll tell you how to care for all the spiritual-ish stuff in your life, and then we ignore the 90,000 hours you spend at work. We ignore what it looks like to be an awesome regional manager or an awesome intern, which is a shame because God has a high view of work. Jesus spends more time talking about shepherding and farming and fishing in the financial sector than he does just about anything else. He speaks the language of work because it consumes our lives, and he knows that. Just Jesus himself, when you think about it, he was a carpenter for 10 times longer than he was a Messiah. And I don't think he would have said it was a waste of his time. According to God, work is actually not a necessary evil. It's a necessary good. He says, come and join me. Let's make something great of this place. And so I don't believe that the solution is to shrink the 90,000 hours we spend at work. Why? Because work is a gift. So what do we do with the 90,000 hours at work? Are we supposed to resign ourselves to a fourth of our life being all-consuming and selfish, or a fourth of our life being fruitless and pointless? No. And call me crazy, but I think there is a way to weather the curse of work while keeping our sights aimed at the vision of work. How? How do we do that? Well, today's a cliffhanger because I'm not going to answer that yet today, all right? Today I'm just laying the groundwork. Today I want you to know you're not alone. And this is a very real dilemma, that work consumes our life. It's supposed to be a good thing for us, and it's supposed to be a good thing for others. We'll get to what that looks like. Today, we just have to understand that according to God, work matters. It really matters. It matters to him, and it matters for us. He created us to do it. The rest of the series, we're going to tackle stuff like this. What you do for work matters. We're going to tackle how you act at work matters. And we're going to tackle who you are without work matters. We're going to look at every single one of those topics and see what God has to say about them. And I truly believe that if we dig into it, God will give us a solid foundation of work so that you and I can invest 90,000 hours into it and see a good return on our investment. I believe it's possible. And so here's our application today. Here's, what you can go and do. It's very simple. It's kind of a big ask, but it's simple. It's this: be here every week of the series. Just be here every week. Now, here's why I don't ask that. I don't ask that because pastors are supposed to. And I don't ask that, I don't care who you want me to be. I refuse to be the kind of guy who's counting butts and seats every single week, and going we had less people than last week. So I'm not asking that of you to make myself feel better. I'm asking it of you because it's simple math. I'm asking you to invest 3 more hours here at this place over the next month. 3 more hours to see if God can influence and breathe life into the 90,000 hours you are going to spend at your job. And whether you become a billionaire, that is how many hours you're going to work. So really, in my mind, I see 2 options for you, all right? The option 1 is over here, just go figure it out yourself. Good luck, You're probably going to be miserable for 90,000 hours of your life, but maybe the next TED Talk or the next leadership podcast will have the miracle solution for you, okay? The other option is just invest 3 hours of your time here over the next month and see if God wants to breathe life back into work. I believe it's worth the investment because I truly believe God doesn't just care about where you go when you die. God doesn't just care about you cussing less or drinking less or fill in the blanking less. He cares about all of your life, even the minutia. And if that's true, then of course he cares about the 1/4 of your life that you call work. So come back next week, and the next week, and the next week. Bring a friend. What friend should I bring? Well, probably the coworker that you do the most complaining about work with, Dude, do you want to see if this church thing will make our lives less miserable? Fine. Come back next week, and let's see if God can't breathe life back into this 90,000 hours. Let's pray. God, I'm thankful for all the people in this room, thankful for all the people at home watching online, all the people in all of our different campuses. God, thank you for bringing us together once a week like this. God, I thank you for the way that you've designed life, that you've designed this world. And as crazy as it sounds, I thank you for the gift of work. I thank you for the gift you've given us to join you in the kind of work you do. It's a really awesome gift. The truth is that we have just buried it under the reality of work. We have buried it under the reality of the stress of earning a paycheck, the stress of providing for a family. God, we've buried it under all the identity confusion that we have at our jobs. Your vision is just buried. God, over the next 3 weeks, over the course of this series, can you dig that back up for us? Can you breathe a little life into the 90,000 hours that we're going to spend at our jobs? God, I know that you're going to do that over the course of the next month, God, so I thank you in advance for that. God, I pray that we show up at the right time with the right people, we learn something new about you, and we walk into our 90,000 hours knowing that it's an investment worth making. God, I love you. I love the way that you've designed this place. I love this church. And then I love your son, Jesus Christ, for making all this stuff possible for us, and it's in his name that I pray. Amen.
You are the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is! What a beautiful name it is! The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is! Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is! The name of Jesus. Didn't want heaven without us, so Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is! What a wonderful name it is! The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is! Nothing compares to this. for being here with us this morning. We love you guys. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you back here next time.